behind the ornate, gold-trimmed windows of Topkapi Palace, where sunlight slipped through carved lattices like liquid gold, one question has always haunted me. What happened to the women who once ruled the heart of the Ottoman Empire, after their beauty faded or their political value ran out? The imperial harem, the harem-I Humayun, was never just a place of pleasure or luxury. It was the real center of power, a world where royal consorts, concubines, and the mothers of sultans plotted in whispers, pulling strings from the shadows. But behind all that splendor was a darker truth, a life sentence dressed in silk. Women who had once given birth to heirs or fought for the sultan's affection could suddenly find themselves locked away in what was called the Golden Cage, a secluded wing of the harem that cut them off completely from the world outside. And it didn't take a crime to end up there. Simply being the mother, sister, or consort of a prince who might one day threaten the sultan's throne was enough to doom a woman to decades of quiet isolation. Take the mother of Sultan Mustafa, for example. After her son was overthrown, she spent years confined in silence. Her rooms were sealed, her movements constantly watched, and her voice erased. She wasn't exiled. She was imprisoned in luxury. They called it confinement, but it was more like being buried alive in gold. These women weren't tortured in the physical sense, but what they endured was far crueler: the slow erosion of identity. Days blurred together until time itself lost meaning. Their letters were censored. The windows didn't open to gardens or sea views, they faced blank walls. Servants were their spies, reporting every word. They were dressed in beautiful gowns they'd never again wear beyond those locked doors. Some, like the once powerful consorts of Sultan Murad IV, were said to have lived out their final years without ever seeing sunlight touch the Bosphorus again. Their names almost never show up in the official records, but somehow, their silence still lingers in the stones of Topkapi Palace. You can almost hear it in the echo of the past, the snap of a eunuch's whip keeping royal order in line. It makes you wonder, who really held the power inside the palace of the world's most feared empire? It wasn't always the sultan sitting on the throne. Sometimes, true authority belonged to the man who carried that whip. The chief black eunuch, known as the Kisler Aga, wasn't just a guardian of the imperial harem. He was the one who ruled it from the shadows, the absolute master of discipline, ceremony, and secrecy. These men were taken from East Africa as children, brought through the brutal trade routes of the Sahara and the Red Sea. They were castrated young, stripped of family ties and future dreams, and trained to serve the empire with unwavering loyalty. Cut off from everything human: family, passion, legacy, they became, in the eyes of the empire, the perfect tools of control. By the 17th century, the chief black eunuch held more sway than many of the empire's viziers. He decided who could see the sultan, oversaw the education of imperial women, and enforced obedience with cold precision. His word could end a concubine's life in the harem or raise her to the rank of Hasiki Sultan, the sultan's favorite and most powerful consort. When order broke down behind those gilded doors, it wasn't the sultan who fixed it. It was the eunuchs. Punishments were carried out with braided leather cords or palm canes. The sharp crack of lashes against skin echoed through the marble corridors, a chilling reminder that, in this perfumed world of silk and pearls, discipline reigned supreme. No screams ever left the harem, only whispers. Chroniclers of the court described the eunuchs' punishments as eerily calm, a quiet violence. They rarely raised their voices, yet their presence alone commanded fear. Every infraction was reported to the Valide Sultan, the sultan's mother, who could decide a woman's fate with a word: banishment, imprisonment, or worse. Ironically, the eunuchs themselves were prisoners of the same system they upheld. They couldn't leave the palace unless dismissed or near death. Their entire existence was bound to a machine that valued control above all else. Then there was bastinado, the beating beneath the veil, a cruel irony of Ottoman justice. What kind of punishment leaves no marks on the face, yet completely shatters a person's will? In the secret rooms of the harem, the answer was well known. Bastinado, the beating of the feet, called falaka in Ottoman Turkish. It was brutal but efficient, a way to punish without leaving visible scars. A woman could be whipped until she fainted, yet still appear flawless, as the empire demanded of royal beauty. Inside the Harem-I-Humayun, where beauty was currency and silence the law, bastinado became a regular form of punishment. It was carried out quietly, behind silk curtains, behind closed wooden doors. A concubine or even a kalfa, one of the mid-ranking attendants, could find herself subjected to falaka for something as small as gossiping, disobeying an order, or simply stepping out of line. The cruelty of it lay in its simplicity. A woman's ankles would be tied together, her feet lifted off the ground. Then, a eunuch or palace official would take a wooden rod and strike the soles over and over again. The number of blows wasn't fixed by law, it depended on how serious the offense seemed, or simply on the mood of whoever was in charge. Old Ottoman court records mention that falaka could leave its victims unable to walk for days, sometimes even weeks, yet it left barely a mark, just swelling, bruising, and silence. Most of these punishments took place in laundry rooms, service courtyards, or tucked-away servants' quarters, places far from the Sultan's eyes, but never beyond his reach. Bastinado wasn't just punishment. It was a warning, a lesson written not on the skin but in the memory. Every careful, limping step a woman took afterward reminded her that obedience wasn't a choice, it was survival. And then there was what some called silken execution, the empire's idea of mercy, the velvet noose of death. What does mercy look like in a world ruled by absolute power? In the Ottoman court, it came wrapped in silk and left no blood behind. Execution by silk cord, bowstring strangulation, was the empire's chosen method for getting rid of unwanted royals, concubines, or high officials without spilling a drop of blood. Inside the harem, it served another purpose, silencing the women whose power had grown too dangerous. If a concubine or consort was condemned, usually after secret whispers, accusations, or investigations, there was no public trial, no spectacle. A eunuch, acting under the Sultan's silent order or the Valide Sultan's command, would carry out the sentence quickly, often under the cover of night. Her body would be taken away quietly. No announcement, no ceremony. Sometimes her name disappeared from palace records altogether. Her chambers reassigned, her jewels divided among others as if she'd never existed. And yet, in the twisted logic of empire, this was considered honorable. Bloodless, swift, and discreet, it protected the Sultan's dignity, if not his conscience. For the women trapped behind those walls, though, it was a constant, chilling reminder that no one, not even the most favored, was untouchable. One of the most infamous examples came from the 16th century, during the rise of Roxolana or Hurrem Sultan. As her power grew, her rivals began to vanish, never officially executed, never mentioned again. Everyone understood what that meant. In the Ottoman court, power didn't shift through arguments or decrees. It changed hands through silence and death. The imperial harem wasn't just a world of luxury and intrigue. It was a furnace of power, fear, and quiet suffering. A place where ambition was bound by silk and rebellion met with shadows. Behind those veils and gilded walls, royal women lived, plotted, and perished by rules no one dared to speak aloud. These secret torments weren't just forgotten footnotes of history. They were the price of power in a world that demanded silence from those who once ruled it.